Enemies to Lovers. Chapter 1. Sparks of Hate. The first time they met, there was no mistaking the tension. Olivia and Alex couldn't stand each other from the very beginning. He was arrogant, smug, and always quick with a sarcastic remark. She was stubborn, opinionated, and never afraid to challenge him. Unfortunately, their jobs brought them together more often than they liked. Meetings turned into debates. Every interaction seemed to be a battle of wills, and neither could back down. But beneath the sharp words and heated glares, there was something else. Something that neither of them wanted to acknowledge. Olivia stormed out of yet another meeting, fuming at the way Alex had dismissed her idea. "Who does he think he is?" she muttered under her breath. Behind her, footsteps echoed in the empty hallway. Alex's voice followed. "Running away again, Liv." She spun on her heel, eyes blazing. "I'm not running away. I'm saving myself from wasting more time on your ridiculous ego." He stepped closer, a smirk playing on his lips. "Ridiculous ego? You're the one who can't take a little criticism." "Criticism?" She laughed bitterly. "More like sabotage. You can't stand it when someone else has a better idea, can you?" Alex's expression hardened, his jaw clenching. "Maybe if you actually listened instead of talking over everyone, you'd realize that not everything is about you." Their faces were inches apart now, and Olivia could feel the heat rising in her chest, not just from anger. His nearness was intoxicating, his breath warm against her skin. She hated the way her pulse quickened whenever he was close. It made her feel weak, vulnerable. But she wouldn't give in. Not to him. "Why do you always have to make things so difficult?" she hissed. "Because you make it fun," he whispered, his voice lower now, a dangerous edge to it. For a moment, neither of them moved. The hallway seemed to close in around them, the air thick with unresolved tension. It was electric, almost suffocating. And then, before she could think, Olivia's hand grabbed his shirt, pulling him closer, their lips crashing together in a kiss that was all fire and frustration. Chapter 2. The Flames Ignite. The kiss was rough, unyielding. It wasn't sweet or gentle. It was raw, filled with all the tension they had buried for so long. His hands moved to her waist, gripping her tightly, as if daring her to pull away. But Olivia didn't pull away. She kissed him back with the same intensity, her fingers tangling in his hair. It was like a dam had broken between them, the flood of passion they had both been denying for so long finally spilling out. When they finally broke apart, gasping for breath, Alex's forehead rested against hers. "Still think it's sabotage?" he murmured, his voice hoarse. Her chest heaved as she tried to catch her breath, her lips tingling from the force of their kiss. "You're still an arrogant ass," she shot back, but there was no bite in her words this time. His lips twitched into a grin. "And you're still infuriating." For a second, they just stood there, the weight of what had just happened settling between them. Olivia's mind raced. This was insane. She hated him, didn't she? But the way his hands still rested on her hips, the way his breath fanned across her skin, made her question everything. She could feel the tension still simmering between them, not quite resolved, ready to ignite again at any moment. Alex took a step back, his eyes dark with something she couldn't quite read. "This changes nothing," he said, his voice a little too rough, as if trying to convince himself as much as her. "Right," Olivia agreed, her voice a little shakier than she'd like. "Nothing." They stood there for another beat, the charged silence stretching between them. And then, with a curt nod, Alex turned and walked away, leaving Olivia standing there, her mind spinning and her heart racing. But as she watched him go, she knew one thing for certain. This was far from over. Chapter 3. Into the Fire. The next time they saw each other, the tension was unbearable. Every glance, every word exchanged seemed to have a double meaning. They couldn't focus. Every time Alex looked at her, he was replaying that kiss in his mind. Every time Olivia heard his voice, her body remembered the feel of his lips against hers. It wasn't supposed to happen again. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness, they both told themselves. But the more they tried to fight it, the stronger the pull became. Late one evening, they were the last two left in the office. The dim lighting and quiet atmosphere only seemed to heighten the tension that hung thick in the air. Olivia had tried to avoid him all day, but now, with no one else around, it felt inevitable. She was packing up her things when Alex appeared at her door. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, neither of them said a word. "I can't stop thinking about it," he said quietly, his voice low and rough. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. "About what?" she asked, even though she knew exactly what he meant. "You. Us. That kiss." He took a step closer, his eyes locked on hers. "Tell me I'm not the only one." She didn't answer. Instead, she closed the distance between them, her heart pounding in her chest. When their lips met this time, it was slower, deeper. The fire was still there, but now it was a steady burn, consuming them both. Her hands slid up his chest, and he pulled her closer, their bodies pressed together in a way that felt inevitable, like gravity pulling them in. There was no denying it anymore. The hate, the tension, it had all been a mask for what they really felt.